Hey guys, welcome to Bible study. Tonight you're going to be looking at the second, third, and fourth commandments from the Ten Commandments. Now the Ten Commandments serve as kind of an introduction or overview to the whole Old Testament law. And as we as Christians look at the Old Testament law today, it's often hard for us to think about how we're supposed to understand it or how it applies to us today. Now this is a very difficult question, and I certainly am not able to give you the full answer to it. But I do want to give you three things to keep in mind as you look at Old Testament law passages that might help you in your study of the Ten Commandments. The first is that there's an indication in Scripture that there's two different kinds of law contained within the Old Testament law. Now the first is the moral law. The moral law is the part of the law that's designed to replicate God's character in us. And the other part of the law is the ceremonial law. The ceremonial law is more symbolical. It's less important and it's less permanent than the moral law. So where do we see this distinction? The Old Testament speaks of it a lot, and one place is Proverbs 21:3, which says that to do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. So these moral law qualities of righteousness and justice are said to be more acceptable to God than the ceremonial law thing of sacrifice. In the New Testament, Jesus says something very similar in Matthew 23:23. He says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier matters of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness." So again, the moral law of justice, mercy, and faithfulness is said to be weightier or more important than the ceremonial law of tithing. As we look at the Ten Commandments, it's pretty clear that most of these are moral law commandments, that they're designed to replicate God's character in us, God's love for himself and his love for people. The one that's a little sticky is the fourth commandment, which we're going to be looking at tonight, which says to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. Now, I don't have a good answer to this question either, of whether this is a moral or ceremonial law. Lots of people disagree on this. But I would say that I think that we as Christians today miss out a lot on God's command for us to rest in him and to trust in him as we are resting. You know, as he rested when he finished his work of creation, as he's still resting today, as we are preparing to enter into eternal rest with him. Now the second thing that we need to remember when we look at the law is that the law is designed to point us to Christ. Paul says this in Galatians 3:24. He says that the law was our tutor or our guardian until Christ came. So the law was designed to teach us or to keep us safe until Christ was able to come. Now, we need to make sure that as we look at Old Testament law that we're looking for the ways that it's pointing us to Christ, to who he is and to what he did. And finally, the last thing we need to remember when we're looking at the law is that always the law is not a way that we can gain favor or earn credit with God. That we are saved by grace alone, through faith alone in Jesus Christ. And that our works in obeying the law have nothing to do with it. We see this clearly in Ephesians chapter 2, where Paul talks that we are saved by grace and it is not a result of our works. So I hope these help you guys as you look at the Ten Commandments tonight, and I hope you enjoy Bible study.